Hi friends, welcome to the Legion of Dogs series on Campervan dog builds. And the purpose of this series is to not teach people how to build the perfect campervan, but how to incorporate a dog lifestyle into a campervan build. And this could apply to like RVs or school buses and things as well. If you're looking for like the picturesque van life Instagram type van, this one probably isn't for you, but I'm covering why we're doing things the way we're doing them. And we're doing a very, very practical approach to a camper van. This is our second build. Our first build was a 97 Ford. And it was a great van. It had been a medical transport vehicle when we bought it. We had it for a few years and we learned a lot from that build. And we kind of went for a nicer aesthetic originally with that one before changing it up. And so this build is a super functional, rough and ready, whether you want to be at a dog show or you want to be off-grid camping in the woods. That's our focus in this series. All right, so before I get into the nitty-gritty, I want to explain who I am and my husband is and what our dogs are, so you guys can kind of see what one of the reasons we're doing certain things ourselves and what our needs were and are. So I'm a dog trainer. I don't build anything professionally, just dogs and relationships. So I come at everything from an animal behavior kind of viewpoint, and I'm the reason we need this. My husband works in construction. He builds homes, so he has a really awesome knowledge of building techniques. He's also super handy. He can do pretty fancy carpentry, and he makes beautiful things. And he helped me, well, he did almost all the work for the last van, and I kind of did the prettying up. So it's a nice relationship. It works well in this kind of scenario because we're bringing different things to the table, and I could not do this without him. However, if you do not have a handy person around, there's lots of ways to still do a camper van if you want to. Insulating is not that hard. I'm going to be doing that pretty hands-on for that part. You can buy pre-made panels for these vans if you don't know how to build or make walls or units to go in them. You could also hire a company to build out your van, but you could do an insulation, put in your own panels, and then install, a cot or a futon bed or things like that too. So don't feel like you have to be the handiest person in the world. If I didn't have James, I would have to consider some of those options too. Definitely for installing the Max Air fans on the roof, I would need someone to help me with that. That's not something I could do on my own. So our dogs, we have 3 working line Aussies, super high energy, super fun. They're always up for an adventure. And then I have 2 miniature dachshunds who are very opinionated and like to be pampered and warm. And they all compete in various dog sports. Most of the time we're going to disc dog or rally events. We also do barn hunt and earth dog with the little ones. And that's who we are. So I want to go into the reasons why I went with a camper van rather than other options. We had our van previously and I loved it. Loved everything about it, except that she was really old and she didn't have power windows. But other than that, her name was Big Bertha and I was emotionally attached and quite enjoyed her. So when it was time for that to end, I had a truck that I was using and we considered going with a trailer to tow or a truck camper. And we looked at those options really, really closely and we almost went with both of those at different times. However, for a lot of reasons that I'm going to get into now, I'm going to talk about why I went back to a camper van. Now, the number one reason is I live on an island. So to get to a lot of dog events, I have to take a ferry. And when you take a ferry, added length increases the cost a lot to travel back and forth. Added height doesn't tend to impact the price as much. And obviously, I was going to have to do one, maybe both. So when we went with a van, we didn't go with the extended length. We went with the long model, but not the extended. And so I'm basically paying as much as I would with a truck. And I just have a little bit of overheight, which means I'd be at the bottom of the ferry. So that was a major reason why I went with a camper van. The other reason I liked it is over the truck camper, it has more storage inside. There's more space. The other thing I don't love about truck campers is they come with like a kitchenette or a bathroom, all of those things kind of already there. Now, we did look at the Scout campers pretty closely. Love them. They look like gorgeous units. But then with storing all the gear I have to bring, especially when I'm running a trial, we were a little worried because we were losing the box of the truck for the truck camper to go into, which meant I was going to have to store all the equipment inside the truck camper. So there was concern about that because we don't have a trailer for gear that we could also add on to haul. So that was a concern. The vans tend to have a lot of room. The trailer I wasn't so keen on because, one, I'd have to tow the trailer, and I don't love towing things or trying to park with things. The other big reason is I'm a dog trainer, and I go from place to place with my dogs teaching different classes, and I like to have them with me most of the time. So the appeal of having them with me in my vehicle out of sight of the public with a bathroom available for myself was amazing when I had it, and I missed it. So when I had my truck, I did have my dogs in there in crates, but it was tighter. People could see them. I couldn't go to the bathroom in my vehicle. And the van doesn't advertise I have dogs in it. It doesn't necessarily come across as like someone's living in it or using it that way either. It's a little more convert than a truck camper with a camper. And then obviously if I had a trailer, I wouldn't be towing that around as I was teaching. So the camper van fit my daily driver needs as well as my like on the road with my dogs, because I travel a lot with my dogs. We go to dog shows. I judge at dog shows. I teach seminars, and we like to camp. And we like to camp kind of off-road. So a trailer becomes kind of problematic when we're off-road camping because some of the roads we go down are really rough. And we were going to have to be particularly careful about what trailer we picked. So with all those things considered, that is why we went with a camper van. I think that a truck camper or a travel trailer are great options for lots of people, just depending what you use your vehicle for. And obviously, most people aren't going to have a ferry to worry about as much. So those are things that went into kind of our consideration of things. The other thing I want to point out is depending what climate you're in, that might impact your choice too. I live in the Pacific Northwest. We don't get overly hot very often, and we also don't get overly cold very often. Our average temp is usually 15 to 25 Celsius, which is 59 to 77 Fahrenheit for anyone American listening. It is damp here. We do get lots of rain and mud. And sometimes, once in a while, I do have to drive in snow. So again, the trailer was less appealing in those options than, say, like a really good van. And then a truck camper was appealing for conditions, for mud and rain and snow, which is one of the reasons we did look at it as hard as we did. The other thing I want you guys to keep in mind with our build is I'm not going to be cooking inside the van, and we're not putting a shower in. I don't need those things. Most of the time when we go to a dog show, we're either buying food or we have pre-made meals with us. Or if I'm setting up to camp, I have a canopy and an outdoor kitchen that I set up. I really like spending time outside when I'm in the woods. So we cook outside. So we're not going to be doing those things in our van, which impacts some of the decisions we make about insulation and airflow and ventilation and moisture. So if you're going to be wanting to put a shower or a cooking area or both in your van, you need to account for those things as well. So that is kind of how we ended up where we are. The van perks were that it offered a climate-controlled environment for my dogs while I'm traveling with them, which means if I'm running AC and I'm driving, they're benefiting from that. If I'm running heat because it's cold outside, they're benefiting from that. There's lots of space for me to stand up and load and unload them inside the van, which means when I open their crate up, I can leash them before I even open the door to the van, which minimizes my chances of having a dog escape or get loose somewhere that I don't want them to be. It's really important. Everything's inside in the van, so if I'm hauling gear, it's going to stay out of the weather, and it's going to be temperature controlled, which can be nice. I don't have to tow anything, and I can sleep inside it, and we're going to put a porta potty in it because I do need to be able to go to the bathroom. And I do like that I'm not necessarily obviously someone staying in a van. At this point, we haven't decided on an outdoor kind of aesthetic for the van, if we're going to be putting campervan type decals and designs on it or not. There's pros and cons to that. And then one of the major perks for me is my dogs are out of sight. So if I stop to get groceries or run into a store, people can't see I have dogs and dog crates, because the well-meaning public has kind of gone vigilante on breaking people's windows or saving their dogs. And that scares me. I don't leave my dogs kind of like just in the heat in a vehicle. I don't think that's safe either. However, they have fans, they have waters. We're going to be insulating the van, and we're going to have rooftop vent fans. So my airflow is going to be a lot different than a typical vehicle. I'm also looking into a temperature monitoring system, which would alert my phone if my temperature got too hot, so I could immediately go back to my vehicle and assist my dogs. The other thing that is nice is the dash hounds like to bark at stuff they can see. And when they're in the transit van, they can't see out. They're in crates inside with no windows to see out of, which calms them down. And if we're at a dog event too, it gives my dogs this nice, quiet, safe sanctuary to go where they're not being visually stimulated. And for me, that is a massive perk, because 3 of my dogs would super benefit from that. And it's part of the reason I went with this option. So that's what pushed us to this decision. I also really like driving a van. I'm going to be honest. I like the room. I like the height that I can see. I do enjoy trucks too. But I really, really like the van. It works for me. For van choices, there is a lot of different choices. There is the Mercedes Sprinter van, which is pretty well known. There's the Ford Transit vans. There's the Ram ProMaster vans. And Nissan used to make a van, and they are available used, slightly older. So those are the 4 main vans we see in North America. I know that Europe and I think Australia have some other options as well, which are super cool. But I was shopping in North America, so those were the ones I was looking at. I ended up going with the Ford Transit van. I'm really comfortable with Ford. Our previous van was a Ford. Both our trucks are Fords. So I'm really comfortable with them. There's a lot of them available right now in a reasonable price point. I didn't look at Mercedes Sprinter vans for a couple reasons. The main reason is I have previously had contact with them, and we had one that was definitely a lemon. Not to say that Fords are perfect, but the cost of getting the Sprinter vans worked on, especially given that they're an import, was a deterrent for me. They also tend to cost more. If you're comparing mileage, they tend to just still cost a lot more. And I'm not in love with anything about them that would make me want to pay more for them. I do understand some people really love them, and I think they're a great choice if you lean that way. It's just not a van I looked at that hard. I did look at the Ram ProMasters pretty hard. They tend to be running a little bit cheaper than the Fords for similar kilometers on them. There was one that I was really interested in. It was a great deal, but it got snagged before I could even get to the dealership to look at it. And I definitely would have gone that way too. The Ram ProMasters and the Ford Transits, from my research, tend to have the similar mechanical issues with them. So I didn't see like a really big pro or con to one over the other. And when we were looking, we decided not to go brand new. We wanted to go slightly used, but we wanted it to be under 80,000 kilometers on it. Our last van had over 300,000 kilometers on it when we bought it. And I wanted a little more life out of this one. And I also did look at some Nissans, but they were far and few to even find. And all the ones I could find were over the kilometer range that I wanted to enter the market at. So what we ended up going with was a 2023 F250 rear wheel, high roof. It's long, but not the extended length. When I bought it, it has 52,000 kilometers on it. It was a good deal. So yeah, I was super happy. By going slightly used and not brand new, I saved about $35,000 to $40,000. So for me, that was a big and worthwhile savings. I will say this, building a van and all the time and money you put into it, having something with less kilometers when you're fronting that kind of cost is nice. So it's not something to completely overlook. But I found if I didn't go brand new, but not super old like last time, I'm hoping this is the happy middle ground. So that's how we ended up with the Ford Transit. But there's lots of great options. And then I did kind of look at some more RV style or school bus options as well. But because this vehicle is my daily driver that I'm going to take to the grocery store and take to teaching, I wanted something that was still easy enough to park. So that is one of the reasons I went with more of the just regular commercial vehicles rather than more of the RV style. So I want to talk about the stuff that I put in my van. So you guys have an idea of what we're kind of hauling. So my dogs go in Roughland crates. They're kind of my comfort zone with crates. I know there's a ton of different crates out there. People have really strong opinions. I went with the Roughlands because I've had them for a long time. I like the design. They work well for me. They're safer than like a pet store, very kennel or a wire crate. And they're easy to clean and they're easy to get in the sizes that I want here. I've researched Gunners and Dakotas as well. They're harder to get where I live. And I was also concerned a little bit with the ventilation. So with the Roughlands, and I'm aware of the criticisms of them, I went with the single doors because I know the doors are a weak spot. So all my crates are single door, just less areas to burst open, and my dogs like them. In my crates, I use the Dirty Dog crate pads. They're great for getting moisture and mud off my dogs when they're in the crate and keeping them dry. We're often wet and muddy here, so that was a big reason why I went with those. For the dash hounds, I also add a towel or a blanket in there because they like to burrow in. We also use Milwaukee packouts for a lot of stuff. It started because my husband's in construction. He had them for his tools. And we quickly realized they were awesome for hauling dog show gear and camping gear. And we ended up building out our last van instead of with cabinets. We used Milwaukee packouts and I'm going to use them again. The reason why is they can clip on and off. They're lightweight. They're waterproof. So when I take them outside with my gear in it, it's protected and dry. And they're just super easy to move around. They all clip together. They can go on a rolling buggy, which means I don't need to have a wagon with me all the time, which is nice. And they come in different types of cabinets. So you're going to see those in our build because I use them for everything. They're awesome. So the other gear we haul, when we're going to a dog show, I bring a canopy, which has sides and weights. We also have chairs for people and dogs. So we have at least 2 people chairs, sometimes 3. The dogs like to sit with us on our chairs, so I have like big luxury cuddle chairs. I also bought one of those Kuma dog chairs. It's awesome because I can sit in it too. It's comfortable. And then I have a like raised little dog bed just to keep the dogs off the ground. If we're camping somewhere where there's a lot of rocks, that's popular for them. But if we're on grass, they don't tend to use it as much. We also bring X-Pens, multiple X-Pens, because there's 5 of them. We have fans. I use the Milwaukee fans. I know a lot of people use the Ryobi ones. They're awesome too. We just have Milwaukee batteries. I bring speakers, sometimes more than 1 to events. We have to bring general admin stuff, so clipboards, pens, stopwatches, that kind of gear. I have to haul agility equipment, so I bring a 15-foot tunnel and tunnel bags and 7 jumps to a lot of our competitions. That takes up a lot of room. I also have dog coats and blankets. The Dachshunds have quite a collection of coats because they get cold, depending what the temperature is at the beginning of the day to the end of the day. The Aussies tend to switch either between their back on tracks for warm up and cool down or their cool on tracks if it's hot out. And I also bring discs. I have copious amounts of discs because I play disc dog. When we're going camping, we also have to fit in the van an outdoor kitchen, a camp stove, fuel, food and water, firewood, wash tub, dishes, lights for outside, clothes, coats, and boots for the people. And if we're going boating, life jackets for people and dogs too. So lots of gear that we need to bring along when we're out with our dogs. So our design is also incorporating the need to be able to fit these objects that are various sizes, like the canopy and the tunnel, in our build. So some people I know they'd be building with like mountain bikes in mind, that kind of thing. This is sort of what I'm working with. So everything is a different height, length, and weight, and it changes depending on the activity we are doing. Let's talk design. So James and I were in our van the other day for about an hour, moving crates around, measuring things out. We know from our previous build what worked and what we didn't like. And you do learn every time you do this. So once we got the crates in, these crates are smaller than our previous van's crates. I had Roughland Intermediates, the Generation 1s for that van. When I transitioned from that van into an F-150 truck in order to fit my crates, I switched to the backseat riders for the Aussies. So I had 3 backseat riders and a mid-size Roughland in my F-150. It was tight. They did fit. So now that we're in the van, rather than buying new crates or changing sizes, because my female Aussies fit really nicely in the backseat riders, we're sticking with the 3 backseat riders. We still have the mid-size for the Dachshund, which is far too large for one Dachshund. I can fit 2, 3, probably 4 of them in there. But I did buy a second mid-size. So each Dachshund will have their own crate. There's lots of room in there. But again, the Dachshunds like to burrow. So they have a thick crate pad that goes up the bottom and the side wall. And then they also have extra blankets. If I was looking for crash safe for the Dachshunds, I would go to a small for each of them. I also have a sleepy pod crate, which can go in my passenger seat attached to the seatbelt, which is a crash tested option. But because we already had the one mid-size, I decided to give them each their own one of those, and just kind of forego the worrisomeness of it being too big if we were in a crash, given that I'm putting a lot of soft bedding in there. So hopefully that's not a mistake, but it is the decision I went with there. So that's the crates that we're adding in. We also have a porta potty. We used it in the last van. She's old. We got it from my father-in-law. He had a brand new one, plastic still on it, that had never been used, and she works great. So we used her in the last van. I still have her. I'm going to use her in this van. Our van toilet is primarily for number 1, unless you're in an emergency. So it stays really clean. I cleaned it often, and I just use a porta potty solution from Canadian Tire in the reservoir, and it hasn't had a smell or anything. It's great. Don't put toilet paper down it. We throw that out in a separate garbage that's sealed. I think you probably could. I just really trying to keep it simple, easy to clean, and liquid only. and nothing to get clogged. So that's kind of like where I went with that. We want to go with a cubby for the toilet so it just pulls out and you can use it, but it can get tucked out of sight when it's not in use. And then we're going to go with a bed that has a hinge that kind of comes up and down. We had this in our last van, and it was hard to put the bed up and down. So we're going to be looking at that design, but it was awesome because it kept the dogs from jumping on the bed. Because when we raised the front part of it up, they couldn't get on the bed. So if I have wet, muddy, dirty dogs that I'm bringing in from outside after a hike, or they need to dry off in their crates on their dirty dog mats, they're not getting on my bed and on my bedding because, they love that. So this design is something we're going to go with again. We debated going with like a full lift because you can get bed frames that can lift like lower and higher to the roof, either pre-made or we could have looked at making our own, but James likes the fold-up option the best. You could do this as a futon style where it turns into a couch too. We're not doing that because we like our mattress and it's just not meant for that. I don't want to sleep on a futon. We have a Juno mattress and it's a double, so it's quite comfortable. We have it from the old van still. It's in great condition. We're going to use it again. So you'll see on our design layout here that the bed is going to partially come up and it's going to block the dogs from getting on and off of it when we don't want them to be on it. It also means when I'm not using my bed, so I'm not actually sleeping in it, we can pull that up and lock it in place and there's more floor space then. It's easier to load, unload things that way. And my daily use of the van, it'll be easier for me to use the middle and the back end a bit more. So those are kind of the key areas of design we've looked at. We are going to be installing a Max Air fan above the bed. We're going with the model with the remote this time because the last van, it was hard for me to reach the fan to actually turn the controls on and off. And this van is actually taller. And I'm only 5'5". So while my husband could easily reach it to turn it on and off, I can't. So that's one of the reasons we're going with the remote. We are in a debate/research of whether we want to do 2 Max Air fans on the roof or just 1. So that remains to be determined. We also have our battery and things for a Max Air fan from the last van. We just didn't have the fan, so we bought a new one of those. So that part of the design is going to be going in sooner than later. Some of our next steps we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting sound deadening in. I didn't realize till I bought my van how loud it is. Outside noise and also inside noise going out. It's different than a regular vehicle and you can hear really good in and out. So we're going to put some sound deadening on. And then we're going to be doing our insulation sooner than later. We're going to be insulating the walls, the roof, and the floor because it just keeps it that much warmer or cooler depending on the day. So that's what you guys have to look forward to in the near future because we'll be filming and covering all of those choices for you. That brings us to the end of episode 1 in this series. Thank you all for listening and joining me on my camper van journey.